very far up, and you probably can't see here, but there's all those black mycosclerotia in the pith there, little black pepper-like things, and that's where the disease gets its name, charcoal rot. How it gets started in irrigated fields, I can't explain it unless there's just so many of these sclerotia in there, and a little bit of stress triggered it at some point. But anyway, here's another problem I saw mainly in my plots, and this is not sudden death syndrome, although the symptoms look a lot like it. Intervenal chlorosis and necrosis, but that is actually triazole injury, group 3 fungicide injury. We had an experimental out there, and actually there was one that had propiconazole in it that burned him pretty well. But anyway, back when we were doing a lot of fungicide work on soybeans, and soybean rust was an issue, metconazole was one that did that, quash, also called caramba. They pulled the soybean label on it because it was so hot on soybeans. It doesn't always show this, but that's triazole injury on soybean.
Previous slide on charcoal raw, what was the previous crop of soybean?
Beck? I think it was cotton. Is Beck still in here?
Yeah.
What was the previous crop on that cotton?
Is there a correlation there?
Shouldn't be. But that fungus is pretty ubiquitous in soils. So I don't know what triggers it in these spots like that, but we often see that. This is not a virus. But I didn't get any questions this year, so people know this is not a virus. Last year, the first year, we had these extend beans, you know, lots of dicamba drift, et cetera, but didn't get any questions this past year, so I guess people know what dicamba injury looks like, and it's not a virus. Brown spot, this is in old soybean fields, we see this. It starts on the lower leaves, works its way up. Cercospora blight, the purpling, the bronzing of the upper foliage. This is becoming more and more prevalent across the soybean belt, even up in the upper Midwest. There's a close-up of those bronze leaves. It almost looks like ultraviolet scorch. And those leaves get crusty, those upper leaves, and they blight back. Now these are late season or end of season diseases that become most apparent as the beans are maturing. You get into R6, full pod, we see a lot of Cercospora blight, particularly when they start maturing in the heat. It's a warm weather fungus. And here it is. This was a trial at Bixby, but I've seen this in commercial fields, particularly when they're starting to go down in September. I tend to see more of the foliar symptoms. Of course, the other issue with this is purple seed stain. That's the same disease. There's a lot of this year. There's going to be quality issues in soybeans, I think, across the soybean belt because we had such a wet fall and there was delayed harvest. I think there's beans in the Midwest that still haven't been harvested. But most of the states, if you Google Cercospora blight and purple seed stain, there's a lot of this out there this year because of the wet fall we had pretty much across the soybean belt. This was the original name of this fungus. There's been a lot of work done it on LSU. About 2000 is when they first started seeing problems in the Mid-South, and it's kind of spread. This Kikuchi is a Korean guy. That's what the fungus was named after. And apparently that name wasn't good enough. Everybody's extracting DNA now and blasting it on for sequences, and they're always changing names. I don't know that anything's really changed a whole lot except the name. They looked at 205 isolates from across the US, and they figured out that it correlates with this Cercospora flagellaris now. There was some thought that maybe the seed stain and the leaf blight are distinct, but apparently they're still the same fungus, thought to be the same fungus. At least in Louisiana, they have documented resistance to strobilurin group 11 and group 1, which now would be topsin would be the only one. Thiophanate methyl benlate would have been another one. And the fungus is probably also resistant to group 3 DMIs and group 7, the newer SDHI fungicides, because they're not, most people don't report a high level of control in fungicide trials. So we did a little work this year. The industry is always interested in looking at fungicides for control of late season soybean disease, so we put these out every year. We had pretty good disease pressure this year, so I'll give you an example of some of the treatments we had in there. We had this was in 2018 in Stillwater on a group 4-8. We applied it at the R3 stage, that's first pod, and we harvested them in November. So these were Approach, which is a strobilurin group 11, Headline, another one, and then we had Foliar, which is your generic TEB, that's a group 3, and then we had Quilt Excel, which is a 3 and 11, that would be azoxystrobin and propiconazole. Preaxor is a 7 and 11, that's Headline mixed with a group 7. I can't pronounce the names of these group 7s, so we'll just call them 7s. And then Trivapro is a Syngenta one with a 3, 7, and 11. I believe this is registered on wheat. Yeah. And then Miravis Top, that's a new group 7 from Syngenta that's has looked really good in peanut trials, really has a long residual on foliar diseases, and it's mixed with a group 3 here. And there was another Miravis product, but I just didn't want to show them all. So, we had a lot of disease there. This was in mid-September, and we had lots of brown spot, a fair amount of Cercospora blight. We did get some reduction in Cercospora blight statistically. Lots of brown spot in there though, and really the Trivapro, Preaxor, and Miravis were the only ones that were statistically significant, but we had reductions in the brown spot levels with all these treatments. And then the defoliation, it was pretty low and wasn't really significant there. And this is kind of what, I don't know if you can see this or not, but you see a greening effect, delayed senescence, and a lot of that has to do with disease control, both brown spot and Cercospora blight. We also took some samples. It was apparent that there was some seed quality issues in this field. Admittedly, we had a lot of stink bugs in there. Didn't do a good job of controlling those. And also, we had a lot of rain after maturity, so they sat out there for a while. So we definitely had some issues with purple seed stain and just general disease, shriveled up seed. Probably most of it was Phomopsis. But you can see here, healthy seed, we had one treatment that went over 50% healthy seed. So this seed is probably would have get docked or rejected at an elevator, I'm guessing. And here's the purple seed stain. We didn't see a treatment. There was a lot of variability in this, and we didn't get a significant treatment effect. So I guess that's just a little too much to ask when you put a fungicide on in August, that it's going to control seed quality diseases in October, because they sat there through October pretty much mature. So I know there's a lot of issues with seed quality this year in soybeans, so this is what we got. There's our yields. We had some variability there. We had some missing plots because of the greening from stink bug feeding. We definitely had some numerical yield increases, but once again, we didn't get any statistically significant yield responses. So we grew more low quality soybeans, unfortunately. That's some of the brown spot that we saw. I want to put a plug in. You know, I've got a stand out there. The soybean belt is concerned about soybean cyst nematode, and I'll explain why in a second. But a lot of times sometimes you can see above ground symptoms of nematode damage, but oftentimes you don't see anything. So farmers aren't aware they have cyst nematode. One way you can determine whether a field has cyst or not is to dig up roots. You can't pull them up because it'll rip the cysts off the roots, but you can see these things if you dig them up with a shovel mid to late season, rinse them off in water. There's your nodules, and these are the cysts from the swollen females. What we do to test soil is extract these cysts. They kind of dry down, then we grind them up and count the eggs because they're full of eggs. Here's the distribution of cyst nematode. Look at Iowa. There's only one county there in Iowa that doesn't have cyst. Here's the current distribution in Oklahoma, kind of follows the Arkansas River Valley. Phil Pratt used to find it over in this area quite often. And JJ, I don't know if JJ's still here, Stokel. Yeah, JJ did this survey back in 2009. Many of you probably interacted with him. But we found it in about 17% of the fields. This was a concentration of eggs we had. We had 6 new positive counties. So that was the map that you just saw there. And this is the kind of damage you can get from those levels. So our highest were in this level. So if you grew a susceptible variety, you would expect about 15 to 20% yield loss there. That's in the worst field that we found. And this is the concern. This is out of Iowa. Most of the varieties that we grow now have this PI 88788 as a source of resistance. So the nematode, at least in Iowa, and this is from Iowa State, this is Greg Tilka's study. He does lots of cyst work. So you can see there that this is the reproduction index of that female, of those females on PI 88788 varieties, and you can see that it's starting to reproduce on those varieties. So there's concern there that we're losing our resistance. They also have yield. I've got some brochures out there. So if you guys are involved in soil testing for fertility, we'd really like samples for cyst. They started a second coalition to increase the awareness because most farmers don't know they have cyst in the field. If you know you have cyst, you can rotate, you can put seed treatments on, you can exchange genetics. Not all these 88788 varieties, which is 95% of the soybean varieties that we grow, have this resistance in there. Not all of them are the same. They have different numbers of copies of the resistance gene. So there's some thought that if you rotate genetics, you're still doing some good, even if you're growing 88788. So you can, to a certain degree, actively manage cyst to keep this kind of thing from happening. So if you guys are involved in soil sampling and you work with soybean growers, we'd really like to get some samples. I've got some sample kits out there, and there's some instructions on how to sample, and I've got my card stapled in there, and you can either drop it off at your local extension office and we'll get it to campus, or call me and I'll get some shipping, prepaid shipping available.
Can you sample today for it?
Yes. Fall sampling is the best time. So a fall fertility sample would, we'd really like to have those. Definitely. Probably in the spring's not as great, but it's okay still. And this is the advertising campaign. This is USB funded. So I got involved in this thing because they asked me to. They want somebody from all the states that have cyst. So I'm trying to drum up some awareness of cyst. Cotton observations, 2018, bacterial blight, angular spots, kind of runs down the vein sometime. You guys have more experience with bacterial blight than I have, because I really didn't look at too much cotton back in 2016 when we had it so bad. I saw bacterial blight in several fields I went into, but it didn't seem to take off. I think we've kind of eliminated the really susceptible varieties, and it's not showing up as strongly. And here's, it can get on the bolls and cause a boll rot. I didn't see any of this year, although I did see some boll rots. Here's a field that's got boll rot in it there, and I think another one. And then there was some Phytophthora boll rot, and we saw these little lesions on these bracts around the bolls. And then I don't have a really good picture of the boll rot, but Phytophthora is a kind of an aggressive disease. But there was one field that had Phytophthora boll rot in there. That'd be a water mole that swims in water and films of water. So boll rot's a generic term, refers to a number of diseases caused by bacteria and fungi that cause damage to the bolls, lint, and seed. These are all the primary pathogens that are considered to cause boll rot. Big long list here. What I saw was anthracnose or Colototricum and this Phytophthora. There are some bacteria that can cause boll rots, and this is bacterial blight here. So there's a long list of microorganisms. There's actually been 170 microorganisms associated with boll rot, but these are the ones that are considered pathogenic on their own. There's a lot of factors associated with boll rot. I think, you know, as we grow more cotton, we're probably going to see more boll rot, insect and mechanical injury, natural openings that these microorganisms can get into. A few, like Phytophthora, can probably directly penetrate a healthy boll. It's generally favored by hot, humid conditions, rank growth, excessive nitrogen, and contaminated seed. That anthracnose boll rot that I talked about was thought to have gone away because they started acid delinting seed, putting good quality seed treatments on it, and it was thought to be seed-borne. But Bob Kemmerite in Georgia told me that it's one of the major causes of boll rot. So, and you also look by region. You can see if you go into the southeast and mid-south, there's more boll rot. This is old numbers, but compared to Texas, Oklahoma, and compared to California, New Mexico, and Arizona, we tend to have low levels of boll rot. Another factor that's really reduced boll rot is routine use of picks to control your canopy. Keeping the canopy compact has I think, contributed to lower levels of boll rot. But if you go into the mid-south and southeast, in really wet years, there's going to be boll rot out there routinely. Here's a problem we saw in some cotton up in the north central part of the state. Kind of white patterns on the leaves, and there was some thought that this was, and there it is close up, there was thought that, and there it is again, there was some thought that this could be areolate mildew, or also known as false powdery mildew. This was a disease that was described in India, but now it's in Georgia, Alabama, and it's a ramularia, which is not a true powdery mildew. That's why it gets its name, false powdery mildew. But all those pictures I showed you were the upper parts of the leaves, and this, areolate mildew is on the lower parts of the leaves. But this is something to look out for. Some other things we saw is late season leaf spotting, alternaria, this was ascochyta, round spots with pycnidia in there. This is areolate mildew in Georgia. It's becoming more and more of a problem in Georgia and Alabama. You can see it on the bottom part of the leaf, and it starts to kill these leaves. This apparently was treated with, this is an extension agent in Georgia, treated with a couple of shots of strobilurine, and this is untreated. So it defoliates cotton. They're spraying for it down there. It's something to look out for here. And then Randy Bowman found some target spot last year. This was in the Ouachita River Valley. This is again becoming more and more important in the cotton belt, mostly in the southeast and mid-south. It defoliates cotton and can cause some yield loss. It's kind of stubborn. It's resistant to a lot of fungicides. Basically, they're using Preaxor is the product of choice down in the southeast. We've only found it in a couple of fields, one in Caddo County in 2017, and this one that Randy saw in the Ouachita Valley in 2017. Several of the calls I got they were concerned about this target spot, so that's kind of why I ended up checking these fields, and we didn't see any in 2017. We probably don't have ideal climates for either false powdery mildew or for target spot, but you know, we've been getting in these weird weather patterns where we don't get much rain in the winter, and then we get all the rain in July and August. So if that continues, and we have more and more cotton planted in continuous cotton fields, we could start seeing some of this target spot and perhaps that mildew. Anyway, cotton's a pretty disease-resistant crop in my view, though. You know, the diseases aren't going to be your #1 issue. Any questions? That's pretty much what we've been seeing.
On the cost of the swimming test, is there going to be any cost?
No, no cost. Our clinic will run it, we'll pay it out of the grant. Yeah, USB funded each state a little bit of money to kind of promote that. So yeah, I got some manila envelopes out on that table. It's got instructions, some information about Cyst, and it's got a couple of sample bags in there. If you want more, just grab some from the table and stick them in there. And you can drop them off at your local extension office, or give me a call and I'll arrange for shipping. Or we can run up there, we can send somebody to pick them up. That'd be awesome. More samples we get, more awareness we have. I'm filling my responsibilities to the USB, so that'd be great. We've got verticillium, like in Caddo County on peanuts, we've had verticillium there. I've seen verticillium on cotton out in Beckham County. We've got verticillium in the state. There's varieties that have resistance though, so you can't just say because this field's got verticillium. I don't know, I'm not really up on cotton varieties, how well they describe them in the catalogs, whether you can select a resistant variety for verticillium wilt or not. I probably need to study up on that. But verticillium's a problem, and it's a really stubborn problem. It's soil-borne. It's a lot like charcoal rot. Cool weather, cool wet weather is thought to favor it, so you tend to see it towards the end of the year in the fall, get some premature defoliation, and you can cut into the stem and see that tan discoloration. It's pretty easy to diagnose if you know what you're looking for. R3, so that would be a mouse ear-sized pod on one of the top 4 nodes. Now those 4s are a little strange, those group 4s, because they're indeterminates. So there's older pods down lower in the canopy, but if you go by growth stage, it's R3. I don't know if we'd have waited to R5, that's another one where the first seed at the top, you can feel a seed in the top 4 nodes. Whether we'd have got better control of those seed diseases. But R3 is it's the protocol that comes from industry. That's when they want it to go out.